Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning! Welcome to another edition of Know Your Tic Tacs. Today we talk about the Mystic. The class that sort of happens when you decide to wholly commit and go full weirdo, and I love it for that. Now, here's the thing though. Before we even get into the abilities of this class, I want to talk about its placement. See, this is something that I sort of touched upon with the White Mage, but there's a very cool aspect to the design and progression of four of the classes in particular, technically more if you want to get technical about it. But in particular, there's an interesting dynamic between many classes in terms of them being designed more for flavor than to necessarily make a whole lot of sense, like entirely on their own, you know? So in the case of the White Mage, we had that interesting little dynamic where basically everything the White Mage could do, the Chemist could basically just do better. We had a case where their abilities took time, the Chemist took and did things immediately. They could deal with some debuffs, the Chemist could reliably deal with all of them. You know, they had a very limited selection of fairly humble equipment, and then the Chemist was like, hey, check it out, like, check out my boomstick. And we have a very similar thing with the Mystic and Orator. It's probably not lost on most that we see the sort of traditional religious classes suddenly getting completely stomped on by the new fancy science guy with a gun. Anyway, so yeah, when it comes to the Mystic, it's in many ways going to be a sort of less technologically advanced version of the Orator, and it is the class that you have to sort of progress through to get there. But here's the thing, it's dynamic. Like, the dynamic between these two is a whole lot of fun, because again, we see the Mystic as sort of taking those sort of traditional ideals of all of these different rituals and whatnot, and essentially just viewing the world in a more mystical lens. You know, that's why it's the Mystic. Essentially, the Orator may convince somebody of various types of scientific theories, or put somebody to sleep with their rambling, or convince somebody to go join their side, whereas the Mystic is physically going and using all their different rituals to meld the world around them in all kinds of different ways. It's not exactly terribly reliable, and it's not meant to be. It's supposed to be that interesting dynamic of the sort of old world, ritualistic, you know, we understand the world in whatever faith allows us to believe in, slowly getting replaced by, you know, science and logic and reason and what have you, until it went haywire later, but that's a whole other story. So either way, I love that dynamic between those classes, but let's go ahead and get into the Mystic, because design-wise, this is, as an actual functional unit, this is effectively what happens if you take the Tactics Ogre, Valkyrie, and Witch and combine them together into what later would basically be the Terror Knight by the time we get to Tactics Ogre Reborn. So yeah, that's kind of neat. I love that as a design element. So, let's get into this here. As far as their abilities go, we'll get into these in a little bit of a moment. I just want to talk about their movements and supports and reaction abilities first, because these actually, I feel, end up defining things a little bit quicker as we carry along. See, there's many aspects to many of these classes that I feel are kind of designed specifically with the idea of single class challenges in mind. It's something that was there for earlier Final Fantasy games, and I think when Final Fantasy Tactics was designed, that probably was at least part of it. Because when we see things like Ignore Weather or Absorb MP, there's stuff that really would not have a reason to be used next to many other skills, even though you would have gotten up to this point. But in the context of being locked solely to the skills of a particular class, they're kind of an interesting choice. Like, between these two movement options, we've got Mana Font and we've got Ignore Weather, right? So Mana Font is kind of the clear, obvious choice. A lot of their abilities are going to be fairly expensive. We'll get to that in a bit of a moment. But when it comes to Ignore Weather, this is effectively just a worse movement plus, unless there's something I'm missing. Unlike Lava Walk, it doesn't let you walk on lava. That actually does have some unique item pickups, interestingly enough. But basically what this does is that it allows you to move through things like swamps and poison tiles without getting slowed down. And it's, again, it's like a very situational move +1 or +2. But yeah, it's just sort of here. You probably already got move +1 back on the Squire, so like, why are you not using that? So personally, I think like this is just sort of like evidence in my mind of some of these classes specifically having skills for a single class challenge, because there's really no reason to ever use this next to Mana Font or any move ability. Just a little bit of a thought there. Anyway, moving on. Defense boost. Now, this one has something interesting to it, because this is actually something that we saw once again in Tactics Ogre in the form of the Ninja, where they had an ability called Steel Stance that raised their defense. Here's the thing, though. Both of them have that interesting property where, because it's lowering kind of incoming damage there rather than directly changing... How do I put this? there's not a lot of things that will change how much damage you take directly. A lot of times the AI will see the damage that they're doing directly and have some sort of score assigned to a debuff or what have you. So anything that boosts your defense directly, especially in a game like this where there really isn't a full-blown armor system in many cases, we're gonna see a case where this is, functionally speaking, kind of sort of more so for invisibility than an actual defense boost. So kind of an interesting little side effect of this one. But yeah, in many ways this is almost like them quietly casting an invisibility shield on themselves. Anyway, from there we have Absorb MP. Yay! You just like the Black Mage, except you absorb the MP instead of casting it back. Yeah, not very good by any metric whatsoever, especially when you have mana fonts. Being able to, recover some MP after you've just been exploded by friggin' space nukes, it's, not very good. So, yeah, not really a whole lot of reason to use this outside of a single class challenge. Moving on. Now, when it comes to their abilities, these are interesting because they are all over the place. Like, they are wildly all over the place. And that's one of the reasons that I love the weirdness of this class, because it just absolutely gives no fucks for uniformity whatsoever. Like, we've got Umbra Empowerment and Invigoration. These things are a cast speed of 50. They are basically going off dang near instantly every time that you use them. So these are going to be your HP steal, your MP steal, as well as the ability to turn something blind. And if you are, if you have played the game for more than a few minutes, you probably realized, okay, blind is not terribly useful, but it might just be enough to potentially save somebody's butt in a certain situation, Maybe they're being charged down upon by something that has absolutely no counterplay to evasion whatsoever, then that blindness might be enough to really tilt the odds in your favor. This actually combines really well with one of their weapon options, because let's say they learned parry from the knight, which in many cases I will assume by default that many people will have parry on the knight, because usually at the beginning of the game you get a bunch of people that are going into Squire and then Knight. Those Knights have a tendency to promote into other things, but everyone will usually wind up with parry as a consequence because they'll usually have 200 JP left over. It's just kind of one of those quirks of progression in this game that almost everyone gets parry and then nothing else from the Knight unless they specifically go for it, so I will assume they have parry. We'll get to why in a bit of a moment, but this specifically combines with one of their weapon choices and parry to actually give them a pretty decent odds of evasion. So I love that this was chosen to be one of the ones that's really fast here. Empowerment just steals MP from something. The Invigoration steals HP. Neither of these are mathable. Umbra is, but you're not going to bother. Interesting thing on this, though. Between all of these, Umbra is pretty cheap, Empowerment, obviously it's an MP steal, it's going to be pretty cheap. Invigoration is surprisingly expensive, prohibitively expensive at the time that it probably would have been the most useful, which is early on. On Tactician, this is, really, really has a hard time pulling its weight whatsoever. But it is quick, so it might be a fast way to kind of disable or to finish something off at a distance. But yeah, no, it's certainly not going to hold up terribly well in terms of actually keeping you up and running. It's never going to be enough to do that. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. So then we get to their sort of middle of the road here. So we've got their various abilities that affect Bravery and Faith. Specifically, they can raise and lower Faith, and they can lower Bravery, but they can't really boost Bravery, but they can turn somebody berserk, which is kind of interesting. So in this particular case, Belief and Disbelief, these are going to be kind of slowish, fairly cheap. But these are going to give you a Faith status, which is going to just temporarily boost your Faith. Disbelief, which is going to temporarily lower their Faith here as well. Thing is, though, this is also usable with Math, and also potentially a good way to potentially protect your party from a mass AoE, because a lot of those big AoEs take some time to actually go and trigger. So while in the hands of the Mystic/Oracle here, this probably won't be fast enough to give somebody, let's say, a massive Faith drop in order to avoid getting, taken out by just throwing one out there. I think Bioga is affected by it. So mass lowering of Faith is a way to help defend yourself against those types of attacks. That could be one way to potentially handle it, or, maybe just use this on a calculator instead. It won't be fast enough in the hands of the Oracle, but it could work. It's just barely enough that against, let's say a lot of the Lucavi bosses and stuff like that, this might be enough to make that job happen. Against a lot of the other casters, probably not so much, but whatever. It's just sort of here as a bit of a thought. It is a cool thing strategically to think about. And additionally, being able to go give everybody a temporary faith boost could be just what you needed to make that white mage work after all. Anyway, from there we have Corruption, which turns somebody undead. So let's say you ran into one of those random fights, especially, let's say, a certain monk encounter that nobody shuts up about on Reddit. Good lord, every 5 seconds there's another, oh my god, have you seen these 11 monks? Holy shit! But as far as Corruption goes, it turns somebody undead. If there's any revive spamming shenanigans that you've ever seen, this is not nearly as cool as they did it in Fellseal, where you basically would bring somebody back as a zombie for your team. But you can turn an enemy into a zombie in order to prevent them from choosing when they revive and hopefully allowing them to bleed out or whatever else. Additionally, if you had a unit that was potentially already capable of raising themselves, this might be a way to help make that work a little bit better. Now, I don't know specifically what the interactions are with this, because, and the reason I bring this up, is we've got stuff like the Chantage, right? Which will give you auto re-raise. And one of the things that you could do to kind of cheese that whole thing, there was a thing you could do in some FFT mods that allowed you to cheese both undead status and revives in weird ways. I forget what the actual benefit of that was now, off the top of my head. Because honestly, it's just Chantage but worse, now that I think about it. Whatever. Besides the point. You can turn somebody into a zombie if you want to. It's kind of neat. Very oddly specific. Maybe it's what you need that day. Who knows? We get Quiescence for turning off wizards. You get Fervor for inflicting Berserk onto somebody. Just makes them go attack things. Remember that Berserk does not go away, so that's pretty darn neat. Now, it is worth noting again, a lot of these abilities are stuff you're going to get for free off of something like the Dancer, and yes, technically, the Dancer is a few promotions ahead of this. But part of the reason that I'm kind of allowing a lot more class mingling than I usually do in a lot of these different guides is because in Tic Tacs, getting all your classes unlocked is pretty freaking quick. So I'm gonna allow it in this particular case. Like, getting a Dancer took no time at all this time around. Anyway, so yeah, Quiescence for silence, Berserk if you need everything going and hitting each other, and then we get to Trepidation. This is one of the more fun ones, as it allows you to lower something's bravery pretty significantly, dropping it by 30 points every time that you're going and using this, meaning that within 3 casts, or potentially lower, you can have something permanently turn into a chicken. Chicken status is like Frog, except that they forever run away. So they physically turn into a chicken and run. So if you need to get rid of, let's say, reaction abilities, you use this once. If you need somebody to be a chicken, you use it multiple times. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on bosses, because they can't, I guess they didn't have a talking chicken sprite, which is a shame. Anywho, yeah, so yeah, this just turns them into a coward, and that's funny. And then we get to some of the funnier ones down here. So we get Delirium, which is going to inflict confusion. Very expensive, just like Trepidation is over here. But Confusion is a great status. Again, better done with the Dancer. It's just kind of here. We get Harmony, which is a freak show of balance as far as I'm concerned, okay? Yes, it's kind of fast. It gets rid of Protect, Shell, Regen, Re-Raise, Haste, Float, Reflect, Faith, and Invisibility. Alright, cool. So you can make the invisible guy visible. That's all well and good. This is functionally speaking Dispel. I feel like it's just here as a reference to tabletop mechanics and whatnot. 34 MP for this shit? Are you serious? Like, okay, it'll get rid of Re-Raise. You're gonna need that, what, once? Like, very oddly specific. Again, it's sort of only here to just sort of like fill out the list, and then you'll maybe need it once per playthrough. It's very, very oddly specific. I mean, I guess technically, I wonder if it gets rid of float on a bomb unit. I've never actually tried that. Something for the future. Again, this class has a little bit of everything, so that's just fun. Anyway, we get Hesitation, which gives Disable. You'd think it would reset their turn, but whatever. You get Repose, which is just going to put somebody to sleep, and then you get Induration, which inexplicably, while it does take forever to cast, this is a decent bit cheaper. But if it lands, it basically is like Better Death, because not many things are going to be able to get rid of stone, and yeah, it just turns something to stone. So that's kind of neat and nifty and such, and it can't exactly revive if it is a rock. So yeah, I guess words of the wise: if become rock, no can come back life. Anyway, getting back to stuff here. So as far as their equipment goes, this is another kind of interesting thing, because they get access to a way wider variety of different weapons than the White Mage does, and this is part of the reason that I was saying the White Mage felt like it was lacking a second balancing pass or something, because this, like, the Mystic really, really lives up to that idea of being this, like, sort of traditionalist that's using all these weird rituals and whatever else to do what they need to do. And yeah, like, some of their abilities are freakishly expensive. The balance is kind of janking all over the place. Some of their stuff takes forever to cast. Some of it is really quick. Like, the utter chaos of this class is delightful. Anyways, so going back to it though. So this is what I was talking about earlier about that parry rate thing. So realistically, most classes are going to have parry, and in the case of their pulls, those are going to start off at a baseline average of 20% evasion chance if you use parry with them. So this means that in combination with, let's say a shield, use it in combination with a cloak, they can be a real dodgy dude. Like, here, let's put a feather cloak on there. We'll go ahead and give them a shield. Where be shields? Here be shields. There we go. Pop that sucker on there. Give them an Aegis shield to give them even more magic stuff. And so yeah, if we combine it together with parry, they are dodging things left, right, and center. This dude is absolutely living his best kung fu movie life, and that's what you love to see. So yeah, it's good stuff there. You might have picked up on the fact that I friggin' love the Aegis Shield for a lot of things. It's nice. It's such a nice combination of a lot of different things. You get your somewhat rarish magic attack boost, you get your ability to avoid a lot of debuff spells and things. It's just nifty, you know? Plus, this is in many ways like the cooler Dragoon, having all these weird, quirky spells and whatever else, but you still have a lot of the same power that the Dragoon does in terms of having a long-distance attack, since poles are basically the spear we have at home. They just kind of broke off the tip and just pretended the damage was the same. Anyway, it's fine, don't question it. Additionally, I love the fact that we see the idea explored from earlier of beating the debuffs out of people, which is especially funny in the case of stuff like this pole, which is actually a pretty formidable weapon on a class that's actually a pretty decent hitter. So, and in fact, many things about this class are basically what I kind of wanted in many cases in something like Tactics Ogre, where you basically have the sort of like spear unit like the Valkyrie was, and they're still doing the whole spell thing, but they've also got the weird debuffs like the Witch did. Like, the Mystic is awesome. I love this. It's so much of what I love to see in these kinds of games. Anywho, so yeah. Why you would need to specifically keep around a stick to cure blindness by beating somebody over the head with it, I don't know. It's an option, I suppose, but it does allow you to get rid of Toad, so, you know, maybe you'll run into some oddly specific encounters that you otherwise did not have an answer for, and surprisingly enough, this pole has a lot more utility than frickin' Azuna does, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's arguable, but still, for the types of debuffs that it's getting rid of, I feel like this does the job interestingly well. It's not literally the same, but how you get rid of oil by... Seriously, how is a pole getting rid of oil? What is that? I didn't even read that one before. That's hilarious. Quick, you're covered in oil. Let me beat you with this branch. Maybe it's like a carpet. They just sort of like lay them over it and just like spank them repeatedly until the oil falls off. What the hell is this scenario? Anyway, sorry. Getting back on track here. So this class is great to combine with a whole lot of other secondaries. Honestly, it's genuinely fine to keep as a regular class. I've heard some complaints about the growths, but whatever. As far as if you're playing on Tactician difficulty, I honestly feel like you can just ignore the growths a lot of the time. Like, who cares? A lot of times it's going to be the fact that you managed to completely disable something with a debuff, or, you know, completely surround something, the actual Tactician part of Tactician, that stands out, rather than the, oh my god, look, I grinded the right class, I read the guide, you guys, look at me, I did a strategy, you know. So either way, it's great for that kind of stuff. Sure, their accuracy is all over the place, but seeing as a lot of their abilities got boosted in very specific ways, it's got some very fun interactions. It's very flavorful. It's like the White Mage, but cool, you know? So yeah, a very fun class. One of my favorites design-wise. They've got some cool visuals, they got some cool aesthetics, they got some cool skills, they got some great flavor. They are a delightful little weirdo, and I love it for that. Okay, so yeah, that's about that. So if that's what you're looking for, that's what you're looking for. And one thing I will point out that does seem to come up quite a bit. Here, let's see. If we do this, like I see a lot of comments in every one of these videos, like, oh, you didn't mention that they scale with this, that, or the other. So if you hit your L3, whenever you're going and looking at your classes here, it will tell you all this information. You don't need me to tell you what everything scales off of, because I will realistically remember something wrong. I like to remember the weird stuff and the strategic stuff. As far as scaling and numbers and whatever else, I don't know if Recession's doing this game, but I'm sure there's like a million people like him doing the numbers. I do not care for the numbers. Anyway, so as we see on the bottom here, success rate of Mystic Arts is determined by the caster's magic attack power, faith, and the target's faith. So yeah, their ability to believe that they are about to turn blind is a huge part of this thing's, overall utility. So that's all well and neat. And out of curiosity, does it mention that for the orator? Speechcraft ability. Yeah, I don't think for Speechcraft. I think it's based directly only off of your own MA, and then for the Mystic, your target actually has to believe it. So again, we see that kind of interesting dynamic, that interesting evolution towards like kind of relying on everybody's faith to make something happen, to eventually just the science is figured out and the thing just does the thing, Either way, that's cool. That's a really cool design aspect. Yes, this class is not directly as powerful as many other options, but god, it's dripping in flavor. And again, the White Mage similarly has a hell of a lot of flavor to it. The fact that their gear options are very humble fits the class very well. The fact that a lot of their stuff is kind of unreliable unless everybody involved has high faith is, again, excellently flavorful. So I want to point out that last episode, I wasn't knocking it in terms of relying on faith. That is a great kind of flavor thing, but that full story of how sort of the scientific units are beating out the traditional units here, I don't feel that it comes full circle until we talk about the Mystic, who is a lot more direct about a lot of that stuff. So I just think that's neat. Oh, actually, shoot, sorry, there's one more thing I wanted to point out here. Actually, two things, sorry. So first of all, the books. We didn't talk about the books. They're weird, they're cool, and they are just kind of here. So basically the books, for some reason Matsuno Games insist on having book weapons, and then just not really doing much with them, so yeah. So like, they were the way to make yourself mega racist over in Tactics Ogre. I'm not kidding, that is directly their purpose. And then they sort of became a way to get weird finishers in the Tactics Ogre Reborn version. Then in this one, what we have is essentially a ranged weapon. You make your book levitate, and you slap something upside the head with your mystical knowledge. Now, it's weird, because only a couple classes can actually use this thing. It's got a very specific targeting range. And additionally, they don't oftentimes have additional effects. There's some in the store and some later that do have some unique effects to them. It's just a weapon that's kind of like a weird ranged option. If you need exactly 3 tiles of range to attack diagonally, that's what they're there for. So yeah, it's kind of neat. They're not nearly as strong or as overall useful as something like the pole, which again has that kind of cool spear utility to it. You don't have the bonuses that the wizard rods do. You don't have the utter disappointment potential of carrying a staff. Which actually, somebody was also pointing out that, hey, there's good physical attack growths on the White Mage last time. Alrighty then. Neat. Oh, and speed-wise, apparently these guys are quick. Good. That's cool. Anyway, so let's go ahead and wrap it up there then. Oh, sorry. One last little note here, because it probably won't come up again. Dual-wielding staves on a wizard. There's very little reason to ever do it, but it occurs to me that I probably should have tried dual wielding like a wizard rod and probably 2 wizard rods over on the Black Mage, because they're probably the only one that could take advantage of the fact that they have the built-in arcane strength, and then you get like the dual wield wizard rods to get yourself 8 MA, and then that might all stack in interesting ways. So, just a potential idea to try if you need a weird build that is neither related to this class nor anything else. Alright, sorry, kind of going off on tangents here. That'll be about that. That is the Mystic. It is a fun class. I love this thing. And yeah, y'all have yourselves a good one. I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.